We begin with the latest escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Gaza's health ministry says that 9 people have been killed. Calm now appears to be prevailing for the moment. This a live shot from Gaza. Earlier, Hamas fired a barrage of rockets from the Strip. They were launched in response to what the group called Israeli aggression in the Al-Aqsa compound. Israel is hitting targets across Gaza with artillery. Earlier, the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, Islam's third holiest site, was the scene of a violent Israeli crackdown. These pictures are from inside the mosque. Israeli forces firing rubber-coated steel bullets, tear gas and sound bombs at Palestinian worshippers. And that's the second time that Israeli forces have stormed the mosque since last week. And these pictures are from in and around the compound which houses the mosque. Israeli security forces targeted Palestinian protesters who were standing guard. The latest numbers from the Palestinian Red Cross are that more than 330 people have been injured. Speaking earlier, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised the security forces for supporting what he called a just struggle at upholding law and order.
A struggle is taking place in the heart of Jerusalem. This is not a new struggle. This is a struggle between intolerance and tolerance, between law-breaking and violence and law and order. The struggle is not new, because it has transpired over Jerusalem and the heart of Jerusalem for centuries. Since the rise of the monotheistic religions, for years, one side ruled and excluded the two others. And sometimes they changed, and the same thing happened. You can say that in the long history of Jerusalem, only under Israeli sovereignty since 1967, we are witnessing a continuous, stable, secure period in which we are working to ensure freedom of worship and tolerance for all.
Meanwhile, organizers of an Israeli march to commemorate the 1967 occupation of East Jerusalem have cancelled their rally. There have, however, been smaller groups of settlers and right-wing activists gathering on the streets, but the main march involving thousands of people has been called off. Al Jazeera's Nida Ibrahim is live in Ramallah for us in the occupied West Bank. But first, let's speak with Harry Fawcett, who's outside the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Harry, a lot for you to draw together for us here. Let's start with 6 o'clock local time when, as you were on air, air raid sirens began to sound there in central Israel.
Well, that's right. And if we wind the clock back a little bit before that, there was a warning from Hamas's military wing that if Israel did not withdraw its forces from the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, known as the Temple Mount to Jews, if it didn't withdraw from Sheikh Jarrah, the neighborhood in East Jerusalem at the center of this eviction dispute, if it didn't release the people it had detained during the course of the day, then come 6 o'clock local time, there would be a price to pay. That price came in the form of 7 rockets that were fired towards the Jerusalem area. 1 of them was intercepted, 6 fell in open areas. Now, this is a very rare event. For all of the escalations and rockets we've seen out of Gaza in recent years, it's not thought of it happens in this part of Israel, or rather in the area to the west of here, which is around the Jerusalem area. There haven't been rockets targeting that for several years. So that's a major escalatory step. As far as the Israelis are concerned, there will be a response to that. The Israeli military is saying that there will be several days of fighting in and around Gaza. They are ruling nothing out, including targeted assassinations of leadership. They're not ruling out a ground campaign either. The fact they're saying several days also carries with it perhaps a suggestion that they're trying to put some kind of a time limit on it, but it's very difficult to do that once these escalations start, because whatever the Israelis do is likely to bring a response from inside Gaza as well. Another thing to tell you about a serious explosion, a deadly one inside northern Gaza. This is during the time that there are Israeli airstrikes going on. Indeed, the Israeli military showed a video of a strike from above saying that it had targeted a cell, a terrorist cell, as they called it, a Hamas one, inside northern Gaza, targeting 3, what they said were terrorists. However, there was also an explosion in Beit Hanun, which killed 9 people, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, including 3 children. Now, initially there were reports that that was an Israeli strike. There have also been sources suggesting that it could have been a malfunctioning ordnance of some kind from within Gaza. It's extremely unclear as to exactly what took place there, whether the video that's been tweeted out by the Israeli military refers to the same incident or not. Hopefully we will get some kind of clarity. We are seeking that from the Israeli military to see if they can rule out that they were responsible for what the Palestinian Health Ministry says is 9 deaths, including 3 children.
And after a day of more violence there in occupied East Jerusalem, has the cancellation of this march to commemorate the 1967 occupation of East Jerusalem done anything to diffuse tension?
Yes, it's strange, really, after these days and days of building pressure and tension, reaching this boiling point in the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound earlier on Monday. Now that we're on the verge, potentially, of a very major escalation between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, the situation here at Damascus Gate, on the fringes of the Old City, is the calmest that it's been for some time. I think that is, to some extent, because of the decision to cancel this march. Monday was always worried about as a potentially very combustible day because of the march carried out traditionally on this day by Jewish Israelis, particularly religious nationalists and far-right Israelis, celebrating the 1967 capture of East Jerusalem, what they call the reunification, what Palestinians consider to be, and international law considers to be, the military occupation that began here in 1967. If that had been allowed to go on through the Muslim quarter of the Old City, there could have been very serious exchanges of violence between the two communities. That seemed a very real possibility up until the last minute. The Israeli security establishment seemed to go back and forth as to whether they were going to allow it to take place. In the end, at the last minute, they decided no. That does represent some significant setbacks as far as Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli right wing is concerned. Jews were not allowed access onto the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, the Temple Mount, on this important day for them. They've also stepped back on this front. They've cancelled a court hearing that was due to take place today, a Supreme Court hearing on the evictions at Sheikh Jarrah, just a short distance away from here. And yet we have this potential major escalation taking place as a result, partly of what we've seen throughout this month of increased tensions. And of course, there was what took place, the very violent scenes that we saw on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound itself earlier on Monday.
Al Jazeera's Harry Fawcett there, live in occupied East Jerusalem. We heard from Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a short time ago. Well, the Palestinian leadership has also been reacting to the heightened tension. Let's bring in Nida Ibrahim, is live for us in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. So, Nida, what has the Palestinian leadership had to say today?
Earlier on Monday, the spokesperson of the Palestinian presidency, Nabila Bourdaine, has said that Israel is challenging the U.S. administration that is trying to calm the situation down. And it's also challenging the international community. And when it comes to the point of the international community, we've had a chat with the PLO's executive committee member, Ahmed Mojdalani, who says that the international community's response and reactions weren't strong enough to enforce Israel to calm the situation down. And he says that the condemnations aren't enough when it comes to that serious escalation. We've also heard from different Palestinian officials, including a top aide to President Abbas. He tweeted saying that the Palestinian leadership is going to convene and study what options they have to confront the Israeli escalation in occupied East Jerusalem. But that has been met with a lot of criticism in the street, where people say that they've been calling for Gaza to respond, and they've seen a response from the military wings of Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, while the Palestinian Authority is still studying what to do. These sarcastic remarks, we've seen them a lot on social media. And there is some feeling that the Palestinian Authority can do more, but isn't. But when it comes to Palestinian officials, they would tell you that they are seeking the international community. They want the UN Security Council, the Arab League, and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to deal with the situation and kind of put pressure on Israel on that regard. We've also heard from the Palestinian Prime Minister, Mohammed Shtayyeh, who condemned the escalation. Let's hear what he had to say in the beginning of the weekly government meeting.
I hold the Israeli government fully responsible for what the worshippers were exposed to in the blessed Al-Aqsa Mosque, and I warn of the consequences that will result from such incursions, as well as attempts to evacuate the people of Sheikh Jarrah, the original owners of the land, from their homes. I call on the international community to intervene immediately to stop these horrific violations and to provide protection to the citizens of the Palestinian territories, especially in the city of Jerusalem, which is undergoing ethnic cleansing. Today, Jerusalem is restoring the glow of the cause.
And what of the people of Ramallah, Nida? How have they been reacting to all of this?
Well, throughout the past 24 hours and even before that, we've seen lots of spontaneous protests all across different cities from the occupied West Bank, including protests here in Ramallah, where we've heard people chanting slogans in support of those in East Jerusalem and Sheikh Jarrah, chanting for freedom for Palestinians and for them not to be evacuated from their houses. But we've also seen many denouncing the Oslo Agreement. This is the agreement that has been signed between the Palestinians and Israelis, or rather the PLO and the Israelis, that allowed for the establishment of the Palestinian Authority in the 1990s. And there is a growing feeling among Palestinians that the Palestinian Authority isn't doing much when it comes to their life under occupation. So we've heard also calls for protests from Palestinians who want these protests to go to confrontation points near near Israeli military checkpoints and illegal Israeli settlements, to kind of confront with the Israeli military, because they know that although they can't go to Jerusalem, it's surrounded by Israeli military checkpoints. They need prior permits to be able to enter it, and some of them never get it. But they believe that it's important for them to voice their anger. Their cause is the same cause. They all believe that they're suffering under the Israeli occupation, and that's why they want to have their voice heard, and they want to voice their anger.
Al Jazeera's Nida Ibrahim reporting live from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Nida, many thanks indeed.